Good morning, everybody, and welcome to webinar number 3 in our Good to Great series. After looking at how airports should manage the fundamental drivers of passenger satisfaction and how to optimize your airport processes, which were the topics of the first 2 webinars in the series, today what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at staff and what you can do and should be doing as an airport to try to create a more customer-focused organization, which is absolutely fundamental and necessary if you want to be able to maximize passenger satisfaction levels at your airport. Airports are in the service business, and that means that the product you're selling or the service you're providing to your passengers is directly linked to the people who are providing it. So your staff, the people who are in your airport interacting with passengers, are key to the service you're providing to the passengers. They cannot be separated. And that means the people in your airport have a direct influence on the experience you're providing to passengers and the perception the passengers will have of your airport, of your brand, of the whole company that is providing the service at the airport. And so if you have staff in the airport who are not giving the best possible image to your company or the best possible image to the airport, that will have a negative influence on the passenger satisfaction and their perception of the way you're serving them. And so if you want to be able to maximize passenger satisfaction levels at your airport, you need to create an organization that is focused on the passenger and that everybody within that organization understands that it is their goal to do their best to maximize passenger satisfaction levels and to provide the best possible service to passengers. And one of the things that makes it so complicated for airports to do so is that a lot of the different services that are provided to your passengers are not done by the airport itself, but there are third-party companies or third-party stakeholder companies in your airport who are also interacting with passengers. And so as an airport management company, you need to be able to get them involved in improving the passenger experience as well. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What you can do to create a more customer-focused organization, what you can do to involve stakeholders and third-party companies into your drive to maximize passenger satisfaction levels, and what are the external signs or the things that you can do to show your passengers that you care enough about them and want to make their experience at your airport as positive or as good as possible. For those of you who don't know me, my name is James Ingram, and the company I work for specializes in helping airports improve and maximize passenger satisfaction levels. And we do that in a number of ways, but one of them is by providing training to airports that want to understand how to create a more customer-focused organization. And so the themes or the ideas I'll be presenting today are taken from some of the training courses we have given to airports. And so it'll be a mix of kind of theoretical knowledge about what are best practices for creating a more customer-focused organization, but also examples taken from airports around the world of what other companies are doing to make their airports more special places and make their airports more customer-focused. As I said, it's the third in a series of 4 webinars on our topic of creating or improving the passenger experience, what airports can do to maximize passenger satisfaction levels within their terminal. Today we'll be looking at customer-focused organizations, and then next week we'll have the final webinar in the series, which will focus on airport ambience and what influences ambience and what you should be doing to create the kind of atmosphere that will help you maximize satisfaction levels. Creating more customer-focused organizations. What I've aimed to do today is try to answer 4 key questions which will help you get a broad understanding of this topic. First of all, a very important one. Why should we aim to be more customer-focused? So what are the benefits of focusing your airport on the passengers? And what are the risks your airport is running if you're not customer-focused enough? We'll be looking at a very important one as well. What can we do to involve airport stakeholders in improving the passenger experience? the service you provide is not just done by airport staff. So what can you do to involve your stakeholders and other companies into providing the service and into focusing on the same goal that you as an airport operator have, improving the passenger experience? We'll be looking at how you can show passengers that you care. So what are the external signs that show passengers that you value their experience enough and that you want to do your best to make their experience at your airport go as well as possible? And finally, and that's also linked to the third question, is what can you do to make your airport seem special? What are the different things that you can do to show that it's not just any airport experience you're providing, but it's a very special, different one, and will put your passengers into the frame of mind thinking, wow, this is a pretty nice airport, and they'll be much more satisfied with the service you're providing because of that. So 4 key questions we'll be answering today. And starting with the first one, why aim to be more customer focused? So what are the benefits of improving the passenger experience and of putting the passenger at the center of all of your decisions and all of the things that you do as an airport? Well, there are a lot of different reasons, and I want to focus on maybe 1 or 2. The first one, of course, is profitability. Airports who are more customer focused are able to earn more in terms of non-aeronautical revenue. The happier passengers are, the more willing they are to spend at your airport, and the more they will spend. We have some data that we're working on right now and that I'll be publishing in the next couple of weeks, showing the link between increases in satisfaction levels and increases in passenger spending. The happier passengers are, the more they will be spending at your airport. So of course, being customer focused is important, but it's also and mainly there to help you drive increases in non-aeronautical revenue at your airport. But there's another reason that I want to focus on in more detail as well, and that's in terms of creating a better or an improved passenger experience. From our experience, we find that airports that are not customer focused find themselves in what we've called a vicious circle of mediocrity. That means that airports that aren't customer focused tend to have a lack of pride in what they're doing. They see what they're doing as just doing a service, and they don't really want to do it as well as possible. So the airport's not proud of what they're doing, they're not proud of their facilities, and the staff working in the airport aren't proud of the airport as well because of that. What happens when staff aren't proud about the airport is they just tend to not care about it. They'll do their job, but it's just a job, and they'll try to do it as well as possible, but nothing more. They don't view their job as providing the best possible experience to passengers on the day. And what happens when you start seeing that is that it reflects in what they do. They'll have poor attitudes towards passengers. If you don't think passengers are your most important customer, your staff won't be treating them as such. So they'll be maybe rude to the passengers, and they won't take care of the airport in general. They won't take care of the facilities, and you'll be able to see it in terms of maintenance, in terms of poor maintenance facilities, which will be able to be seen throughout the terminal. And if you remember what we talked about in webinar 1, for those of you who are with me, good maintenance and having nice, clean facilities are absolutely fundamental if you want to be able to improve the passenger experience at your airport. So when you have poor maintenance, it's damaging your passenger experience. And what happens when the airport has poor maintenance and doesn't look very nice and looks a bit run down? Well, passengers start not caring about the airport either. That means they'll drop garbage on the floor. They'll be rude to staff. And so you find yourself in this vicious circle where the airport's not proud of what they're doing, the staff don't really care, the facilities look like the airport doesn't care, and then the passengers don't care and just leave stuff around, make the airport dirtier, and so you end up in a vicious circle of a downward spiral towards mediocrity. So by simply not caring about passengers and not having a strong customer focus in your airport, you're actually damaging the image of the airport that you're providing to passengers. Your passengers will stop caring and stop doing their best to keep the airport looking nice, and so you'll end up in a cycle where it will just get worse and worse. And if you want to be able to break out of that, you need to find ways to break out of this vicious circle. And you need to start by asking yourself, have our staff really understood what their focus is? Have they really understood that their job is to make sure the experience for passengers is as good, as enjoyable as possible today? Or are they simply doing their job, business as usual, and going through the motions and not doing their best to provide a great passenger experience? When staff don't really care, you can see itself in the terminal. You start seeing things like this in the washrooms. Cleaning staff leaning their cleaning material out in the washrooms because they think their job is to clean the washrooms often, not to make them as convenient and as nice to use for passengers. Or maintenance staff that doesn't put things straight and so leaves a negative impression to passengers. It's a lot of small signs, and when we work with airports, quite often we find that there's not just one reason why the passenger experience has dropped or why satisfaction levels are not high enough, but it's usually an addition of lots of different small experiences that all taken together have contributed to creating a negative overall experience or a negative perception that passengers have of the airport. And so if you want to be able to maximize satisfaction levels at your airport, you have to make sure that this kind of bad habit or poor perception is not communicated by your staff. And that means you have to have staff who understand that their goal is to maximize the passenger experience and to make it as nice as possible for passengers. And that starts with setting yourself high standards. Quite often, airports that achieve average level of satisfaction, it's simply because they have average standards. If you're aiming for average, average is what you'll get from your staff. If you want to significantly improve your satisfaction levels, you have to give your staff a goal and to show your staff that they need to do their best to try to reach their goal. That will help you break out of that vicious circle. And what characterizes the most customer-focused airports and organization is they have set themselves this kind of target, and they set themselves high standards. And everything starts from the top. If your airport leadership or management does not believe in improving the passenger experience, chances are you will never be able to achieve a significant increase in satisfaction levels. Your organization has to believe in it, and it has to start from the top. You have to have a strong global management focus on improving the passenger experience in order to be able to try to maximize satisfaction levels at your airport. They need to set high targets, and the airports who are best in class for this don't just settle for average standards. They want to exceed expectations and become better than other airports in the region or better than other airports in their country. They want to be the best they can be. And they give themselves the means to do this. They invest in their staff. They make sure they provide training for their staff so that they have the tools and knowledge that they need to be able to provide the best possible experience for passengers. And they put in place a framework that recognizes and encourages staff to outperform themselves, to excel. So they incentivize good behavior through different rewards and recognition programs at the airport. And they make sure they don't limit themselves to working with airport-only staff. The best airports have understood that services provided to passengers are not just provided by airport staff. So if you want to be able to maximize satisfaction levels at your airport, you have to get third-party staff and third-party stakeholder staff on board and working with you, not against you. And so they try to create relationships with their partners to try to get them involved in improving the passenger experience as well. So it's really a whole organizational shift that needs to be put in place if you want to become more customer focused. And it really has to become more than just a decision made by your team. It has to become a philosophy, a guiding philosophy that inspires and that guides your teams and your staff in all the decisions they make. A lot of airports use slogans, corporate slogans, to try to create kind of an understanding of what the company expects or what the company wants to provide. But the world's best airports, it's more than just a slogan for them. It's a philosophy. It guides every single decision they make. It guides every single decision their staff makes, and it encourages their staff to work together more closely towards the common purpose that the airport has set itself. Singapore, for instance, their corporate slogan is "The feeling is first class." And that means that everything they do, from the most visible to the smallest detail at the airport, aims to make the passenger experience first class and different as possible. Incheon, What they want is to be more than an airport. They want to be beyond expectation. So they expect their staff and the company as a whole to work towards providing the type of experience you're not used to seeing in airports, to wowing passengers every single step of the way. They want passengers to understand that their airport aim is to provide not just any sort of passenger experience, but the best possible passenger experience there is. And so what they're doing is they're really creating a focus, a goal, a common goal that everybody in the airport is working together. These are not empty promises, but these are things that guide absolutely everything that these airports do. And if you want to be able to maximize satisfaction levels at your airport, you have to achieve that same sort of commitment from your teams and from your staff. But you can't just do it by yourself. If you want to be able to improve satisfaction levels at your airport, you need to work on involving the other companies that are also providing part of the passenger experience, getting them involved in your drive for maximizing satisfaction levels at your airport. And that's what we're going to look at now. How you can involve stakeholders in the process. And to start, you need to understand that there are different types of stakeholders working at your airport. There are different groups of companies working, different groups of people that you can influence in different ways. The first of the groups that you usually work with is what we've called the circle of control. This is airport staff. So people who are working for your company, who you can directly influence through your decisions, through your policies, and who you can control and encourage to try to maximize the passenger experience. So by creating a more customer-focused organization in your company, you'll be able to drive these people towards your goal of maximizing satisfaction levels. But it doesn't stop there. Airports also have what we call the circle of influence. So these are third-party companies, third-party stakeholders who don't directly work with, who aren't directly part of your company, but who are part of the service that is provided to passengers and who you work with. These are your outsourced suppliers, people that you have contracts with, working relationships with, and that you can try to influence but you don't directly control. Working with them, it's going to be a question of what you can do in terms of your working relationships to be as good as possible in terms of getting them to understand your goals and to working towards a common goal with them. It's using SLAs to try to govern the relationship if you want, and encourage those companies to do their best. But it doesn't stop there. There's another circle, which we've called the circle of concern. These are the government agencies, maybe doing your security, your immigration, other government offices at your airport. And these might be the most complicated stakeholders to work with, because their goal is going to be to make your airport more secure or limit entry to your country. They don't view their goal as providing the best possible passenger experience. So it might be very hard for your airport to try to get them on board and get them involved in improving the passenger experience. But you have to try. In some cases, it might be absolutely impossible, and you might end up just having to limit the damage that they're doing to the passenger experience. But the world's best airports, those that we've seen who have been the most customer-focused, have been able, through developing strong working relationships with these people, to try to get them involved in the whole push for maximizing satisfaction levels at their airport. So 3 different groups of people working in the airport, 3 different levels of influence you can have on them, and in terms of getting them to try to and encouraging them to maximize the passenger experience and to do their best, to see it as part of their goal to provide a good experience for your passengers. And what distinguishes average airports from great airports is the way that they work with stakeholders, how they view the relationship. Average airports see their relationship with stakeholders as simply a relationship as with suppliers. You are providing a service, we have a contract that limits what you can do and how you do it, and we will be controlling to make sure that you do it as well as possible. They don't share information with them. They don't give them access to survey results or things that might help them do their jobs better. They don't provide training for their staff, and they're not helping them have the tools they need to be able to do their job better. And they definitely don't involve third-party companies in any sort of decision-making. So it's really a question of having a contract and enforcing the contract with penalties and rules and regulations. Best-in-class airports, or the real customer-focused airports, are very different. They've understood that the airport experience is provided not only by airport staff, but also by the staff working for these different third-party companies. And so in order to be able to achieve the maximum levels of satisfaction within their organization, they have understood they need to find ways to get these staff involved and working towards the same goal. So what they do is they've developed strong relationships, which are more like partnerships with the stakeholders. They keep them informed of all the different new developments of the airport. If there are changes in the passenger profile or in terms of passenger expectations, they inform them of this. They provide training for third-party staff, where the airport will itself pay for training or conduct training for the third-party company staff to help them understand what the airport's goals are in terms of improving the passenger experience and giving them the knowledge that they need to be able to do so, giving them the tools that they need to be able to be part of that. And they give them a say in the decision-making process. The best airports in the world in terms of involving and working with stakeholders give them a seat in all the key decision-making meetings. They don't just take the decisions on their own, but they involve stakeholders, they discuss it with them, and they try to reach a goal which is achievable for both companies. They try to reach a compromise which helps both companies meet their goals in a manner which is possible. So the airport is not enforcing decisions, but collaborating with stakeholders to try to get them on board, understanding the airport's goals, and of part of that whole global philosophy that the airport has of improving and maximizing passenger satisfaction levels. And one of the best examples I have of that, and probably the airport that I've worked with which has achieved this best, is Delhi Airport in India. They've recently done a lot of renovation at the airport, built new facilities, and all that was part of a push by the company, but also the country, to provide India with the sort of global gateway that it deserves. And Delhi was seen as that global gateway, and so the goal of Delhi Airport was to provide the best possible welcome for passengers, to showcase what's best about Indian culture, and to show them that, yes, we'll provide facilities that you deserve as a valued guest to our country. And they did that under the banner of one airport, one customer, one team. So everybody in the airport working together to try to make that passenger experience better. To get stakeholders involved, they did workshops with security and immigration staff. So the airport quality team held workshops with these agencies to try to get them on board and to help them understand what they can do and what part they play in the passenger experience. They created venues for staff from different companies or different agencies at the airport to meet, to mingle and discuss and to share best practices for improving the passenger experience. They created those relationships which are important to have everybody working together as one team towards one common goal. And they communicated heavily about it. They have an annual Smile campaign which is shown not just to passengers but also to staff to try to get people to work better together and to be more friendly and more outgoing to passengers day by day at the airport. So it was really a global push that has enabled Delhi Airport to improve passenger satisfaction levels, starting at a corporate level and then working down to every single person working in that airport, who now when you go there, even the people in the cleaning the washrooms are smiling, happy, and are very proud of working for Delhi Airport because they have that one common purpose, one common goal, and they're seen as being part of something which is making Delhi Airport greater, but making India greater as a whole. So it's giving these people the purpose or the goal that they need to excel. And having a passenger-focused organization is one thing, but you also need to make sure that this reflects in how you're doing things, the individual decisions you're making at your airport, and the actions and activities you have in place. So it's understanding what you can do to actually show passengers that you care. So what are the external signs that shows that an airport has a customer-focused organization and it cares about its passengers? Showing that you care is about helping passengers understand that you will do your most to make their individual day or individual journey at your airport go as well as possible. It's doing your best to make your airport seem more personal, more enjoyable, and more thoughtful and positive for passengers. And I want to look at some of the different ways you can go about doing that with examples from airports around the world. High-class facilities show your passengers that you care about them, that you value them enough to want to provide the best possible facility for their time at the airport. You want to make their journey as enjoyable as possible, so you're going to make the place that they're in as nice as possible. Your shops and your retail also reflect that. High-class or high-end shops at your airport might not be the place all passengers will go to do their shopping, but just by having them, you'll give passengers the impression that they're in a luxurious, high-end facility, and that the airport values them enough to provide this sort of service, and that it's a classy experience for passengers. So your retail, and having some higher-end retail at the airport, shows passengers and gives them the impression that they're in a higher and luxurious facility, and that they'll feel more valued because of that. Now, of course, not all airports have brand new facilities or the possibility of building this type of facility. But that doesn't mean that you can't achieve this within your existing or your older terminals. If you remember what I talked about earlier in terms of maintenance, having good maintenance and taking good care of your facilities will help you project the kind of impression that you care about your passengers. If you're caring for your airport, it's showing passengers that you care enough or you value them enough to want to take as good as care possible and make them have their journey in your airport or their time at your airport be in the nicest facility possible. So good maintenance shows that you care. Poor maintenance tells your passengers that you don't value them very much and that you don't really care about their experience at your airport today. Showing that you care is also about being thoughtful. There are a lot of small things that you as an airport can do to show that you're willing to go the extra 5% to make the passenger's journey at the airport be as enjoyable and as nice as possible. Small things go a long way. Like, for instance, aligning the baggage carts around the baggage belts in the arrival area. Small things like that shows that the airport has understood what passengers want and will do their best to make the time passengers have at the airport as convenient as possible. But it's also thoughtful things, and small touches like flowers in the washrooms, small decorations, a staff member who is kind and helpful and friendly to passengers proactively. These are the small things that you can do to make your airport experience seem nicer and more personal. Think of it this way. Quite often, when you receive a friendly note or a kind note from a friend who's taken the time to write you something very, very nice, it's often much more enjoyable than to receive a very nice or even a very expensive gift, even though it might be a very nice one. Well, it's the same thing with an airport. Small touches, being thoughtful, can go a long way to making even your aging or older facilities seem nicer and making the airport show that, or helping the airport show that it cares, much more than brand new facilities. And so a lot of smaller or older airports we've worked with have been able to achieve high levels of satisfaction by working on how to be more personal, how to be providing a better, more thoughtful passenger experience every single day. And showing that you care starts right on the airport website. The first touch point passengers, or many passengers, will have with your airport is when they're at home, when they're doing research on the airport to try to find information about their flight or their trip to the airport that day. And so right there on your website, you have a first opportunity to make the passenger understand that it's your goal to provide the most enjoyable experience as possible. And one of the best examples I've seen of that is this one from Gatwick Airport, where they've taken a completely different track on the airport's homepage. Now, quite often airport homepages have a lot of flight information and maps and information on parking and shopping on it, and it's all a bit cluttered and hard for passengers to find the information they want. Well, Gatwick has completely simplified their airport homepage, and turned it completely on its head, made it completely about the passenger, and is showing passengers that we care about you individually and we want to make your experience at our airport as good as possible. And so when you go on their website, what you do is you enter your flight information and your destination, and the airport website will then present the information you need to make your journey as convenient as possible. They'll have your flight information, of course, information of where to check in, things like the weather at your destination so you can know what to pack and what to expect. But they'll also be providing information regarding the time you'll be spending at the airport. Here's some nice shops that you might consider looking at when you're at the terminal, and this is where they'll be located compared to where you'll be taking your flight. Here's some restaurants you might want to consider. So they're providing the information for passengers in a way that is completely passenger oriented and completely personal, but they're also that way improving their chances of having passengers look at their more commercial messages, which might be related to the parking, the F&B, or the shopping, and which will help the airport increase its non-aeronautical revenue. So your airport website should be thought about in terms of what can I do to make it as personable and as useful for my passengers and for each individual passenger coming through our airport. That's how you can start showing that you as an airport care right from the second that the passenger journey starts. And showing that you care is also about broadcasting positive messages. When you have positive messages in your terminal, positive staff, it's kind of infectious. If your staff is friendly to passengers, chances are passengers will be friendly back to staff. So that will mean that staff will be less likely to be rude and so on. So you're creating a virtuous cycle or virtuous circle which will encourage and put people in a better mood. And even if situations are stressful, there might be delays or long waits, simply small things like a smile and understanding a phrase or a sentence can help and go a long way to defuse a stressful or an unhappy or an unfriendly situation. So don't hesitate to be positive in the messages you broadcast and the way you approach passengers at your airport. And finally, beyond showing that you care, you also want your airport to be seen as a more special, more enjoyable place. And that's increasingly becoming important, especially in developed countries where passengers are more and more used to traveling, they're used to airports, and they're kind of getting bored with the usual things that you can see in airports around the world. And so if you want your airport to seem a little bit different, you have to work on doing things differently to other airports around the world and trying to make your airport seem a little bit more special. And there are 5 broad ways to do that. And what I want to be doing in this final section is showing you examples of best practices of how airports around the world are able to achieve that in different ways. If you have a ton of money and a lot of room around your airport, one of the best ways to go about making your airport special and memorable is unique architecture, building brand new facilities with beautiful architecture that stuns passengers as soon as they get out of their car. As soon as they walk into either Dubai on the left or Incheon on the right, passengers think, wow, this is going to be a completely different experience and it's going to blow my mind away. And so making a strong first impression with your architecture is one way of making your airport seem different, special, or memorable. But you don't need to have tons of money to make your airport feel special. There's a lot that you can do on a smaller budget by being much more creative. And there's a lot you can do in terms of interior design for making your airport seem different or more special. Take the washrooms on the left here in Incheon. Those of you who were here in the first session remember that. Incheon's goal is to be more than an airport beyond expectation, and so even down to small things in their interior design, they're doing things completely differently from what you would expect to see in other airports. So even the sinks in their washrooms are completely different from what you can see in other airports. So they're surprising passengers and making passengers think, wow, this is not like any other washroom I've seen. But you can also do a lot with being creative and doing small things. Look on the right, that's Stavanger Airport in Norway, a picture I took at Christmas last year. It's a small airport, and they wanted to use that as a strength. And so what they did is they took away some of the seating in some of their gate areas and replaced it with a nice comfortable carpet, nice comfortable couches, and a sticker on the wall showing a fireplace and a Christmas tree, to make passengers feel like they're sitting in a living room rather than being in an airport. Now that doesn't cost much money to do, but it's a great example of being creative and doing things that will make passengers look at that and go, wow, this is actually a pretty cool airport, and this looks like a really different and comfortable place to sit. And the airport has understood that a lot of passengers like to spend time at the gate sitting, and so why not make it as comfortable and enjoyable and as homey as possible? So reinforcing the sense of you're in a small, cozy airport and making that a strength for the airport instead of it being a weakness. One of the things that you have that no other airports around the world have is your unique local culture. And so showcasing your local culture and creating a sense of place at your airport is a great way of making your airport stand out from others. You're the gateway to your city or to your country, and so if you're able to bring part of the local culture into your airport and make the airport seem like an extension of the city or the country, you'll be able to be completely different from what passengers have seen in other airports around the world. If you look on the right, you instantly know that that's Las Vegas Airport. There's slot machines in the airport, and it looks more like a casino in some senses than an airport. But it's Las Vegas, and that's what people expect when they come to Las Vegas. And so by providing that, the airport is able to make the facilities seem like an extension of the city and part of the whole Las Vegas experience. So benefiting from the positive experience that passengers have had in the city. And your retail and F&B is one of the great ways you have of showcasing local culture and creating a sense of place. And what you usually see in a lot of airports is the same global brands that passengers can find anywhere. And even in the duty-free shops, there's maybe one small section with local products. Well, increasingly, airports are turning this reasoning on their head. Look at Lisbon Airport on the left. The retail in Lisbon Airport, what they've done is they've created a whole new section, a whole new store concept focusing on showcasing Portuguese culture and the best of Portugal, giving passengers a final taste of Portugal before boarding their plane. So they're showcasing local food and wine, but also clothes and things, local artwork, things that are unique to Portugal and that are special to Portugal, and the passengers will enjoy and will think of, okay, I can take a piece of Portugal home with me when I go home to my family. So they're making their airport, and even in the retail, seem completely local and completely proud of the airport being the gateway to Portugal and the gateway to providing a first taste of Portugal for passengers. Or look at Copenhagen on the right. This is a pop-up restaurant that they did for their food festival last year, where they invited local chefs to come into the airport and for a short period of time give passengers a taste of Denmark, a taste of Danish cuisine, which would give passengers a unique taste of what it's like eating in Denmark. They have their big brands for passengers who want that, but they also wanted to provide passengers something special, something completely different and unique to their country. And it's also showing passengers in both of these examples, we're proud of being the gateway to our country, and we want you to have a taste of what is the best of our country and to go away with that taste in your mouth. And it's also giving your passengers unexpected things to see and to do. Singapore Airport is probably the best at this in the world. They've done a whole lot in providing experiences at the airport that you can't get anywhere. But these don't have to be great expensive experiences. If you look on the left here, a very small, cheap thing that they did, but went a long way to providing a good passenger experience, is what they did at Christmas a couple years ago in the check-in area, where they had a big bouncy castle there that greeted passengers as soon as they walked in the door. Now, absolutely every family walking into the airport, the kids saw that and wanted to go and jump on the bouncy castle. The parents were happy because the kids were happy. And so right from the minute they walk in the door, passengers get a first experience of, wow, this is going to be a fun and nice airport to be in, and an airport that's going to do its best to make our experience as good as possible. But your artwork as well is another way you can make your airport seem special, and do so at a fairly low cost. This example on the right was in Toronto Airport. It's simply a big aquarium with plastic boxes which are floating around and being projected around the interior of the aquarium by currents. It's right before security, and every passenger walking by, or when I stood there for a few minutes, most passengers who walked by stopped and took pictures and commented on it. So again, it's providing things that are unexpected and people don't usually see in an airport, but will mark the passengers, and they'll think, hey, this is actually a pretty good airport to be in. Now, as I've spoken about in the previous webinars, this kind of thing will only work if you're managing the basics well and your processes are well managed as well. If you're trying to be special, but haven't managed to focus on the basics or to provide a good experience in terms of the drivers and the airport processes, this will not work at all. Passengers will think the airport's trying to be special, but they haven't understood what are the most important things to me, and so you will not be able to achieve high levels of satisfaction. For this kind of thing to work, you need to make sure that everything else at your airport is working well as well. And the final way that you can make your airport special, and that brings us all the way back into a full circle, is your staff. That's why so many airports are having ambassador programs at the airport, bringing the local community into the airport and showing that we as a local community care about you and want to make your trip with us today as enjoyable as possible. And these ambassador programs go a great way of showing that we have a corporate culture at our airport that values you as a passenger and want to do our best to make your experience as positive as possible. And for them to work, we really recommend focusing on having the ambassadors try to identify who are the non-frequent travelers at the airport and do their best to try to help them as much as possible. Frequent travelers tend to know the airport and know their way around and don't want to be helped. And so these ambassador programs work best when they're focused on helping the non-frequent travelers and helping making their experience at the airport as positive as possible. In conclusion, if you want to be able to maximize satisfaction levels at your airport, you need to create a culture throughout your organization that is focused on the passenger and that is focused on improving the passenger experience. You need to have a culture that gives staff a real sense of purpose, a real goal to achieve, and that has set itself high standards in terms of what it wants to achieve. And then you need to have a framework in place to encourage, motivate, and give staff the tools and insight and knowledge that they need to excel. What you need to avoid is letting your staff get into any sort of bad habits which can negatively impact the passenger experience and the perception that passengers have of your airport. You need to avoid seeing corporate culture or customer-focused organization as simply being as an airport staff concern. You need to try to avoid keeping stakeholders out of the decision-making process and keeping them out of the information loop in terms of what are the new trends and what are the new information and insights about what drives satisfaction with the passenger experience. If you want to excel and significantly improve satisfaction levels at your airport, you need to set yourself high standards and you need to make sure that everybody in your organization, but also people working for your third-party stakeholders, have the tools and knowledge and insight that they need to excel. The best airports have understood that if they want to maximize satisfaction levels, they also have to get their third-party staff involved in the drive for improving the passenger experience. And so they work on partnering with them and working with developing a strong relationship with them that will help them achieve that. They provide that third-party staff with training and tools and knowledge to make sure that they have everything that they need to provide the best possible experience for passengers. And they try to motivate them and encourage them to do so. And finally, what they do is they have found out ways to show passengers that they care. That throughout every single decision the airport takes or everything the airport does in a visible manner is done to show passengers that they are valued and that the airport will do its best to maximize their experience and to make it as good as possible. Those are the keys to providing the sort of organization or creating the sort of organization which will help you significantly improve passenger satisfaction levels at your airport. I'd like to thank you for your attention, and again remind you that if you have any questions or would like to discuss this in more detail, what you can do to try to make your organization more customer focused, or if you need reports or information to help convince your team of the benefits of being more customer focused, I'm always glad to help. You have my email address, my phone number. You can contact me at any time. And again, we also provide training services, which are a great way to help your team understand the best practices for improving passenger experience, and explain to them, what are the benefits and what you can do as an airport to improve the experience for your passengers. So this is also something we can help you with if you're interested. And I'd like to invite you all to join me next week for the final webinar in the series, focusing on airport ambience. So next week we'll be looking in more detail at what influences airport ambience and what you can do to try to maximize satisfaction levels with ambience at your airport and maximize passenger satisfaction levels with your airport in general. I'd like to thank you all for your time and wish you all a very good week, and don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions or would like to discuss any of the points we brought up today in more detail. So I hope you found it useful and enjoyable, and I hope to see you again next week.